If you'd like to support this channel, please consider purchasing a copy of my book, Captain Steel and Other Stories, on Amazon, especially if you are a fan of speculative fiction. Underwhelming. That's the word I'm choosing to describe this year's Comic-Con announcements. There wasn't much for me, as a lifelong comic book fan, to get excited about, with the Marvel announcements in particular, and that's a bit of a problem. If someone like me isn't excited, a lot of normies aren't going to be either. And they outnumber us by a huge margin. The Wakanda Forever trailer. I think it was a mistake to have T'Challa die in the MCU. Chadwick Boseman's death was a tragedy, to be sure, and it made me very sad when his 2020 death was announced, but I think it was a mistake to carry that over into the world of Black Panther. I think another actor should have been selected to replace Chadwick as T'Challa. You begin Wakanda Forever with a title card dedicating the film to Chadwick, and then you move on. The audience would understand, just like they understood with the recasting of James Rhodes and Bruce Banner. And then the character could have continued to entertain. Instead, this trailer looks like a real downer, like it's going to be a 90-minute eulogy, dealing with the apparent death of T'Challa in the MCU and his replacement with what many are assuming to be a female version. What I'm going to say now is going to sound very controversial, especially initially, but I do think that the original Black Panther film was highly overrated. It was a good film, but it was overrated. Much of its box office success came not from the public's interest in the character, but rather from the film's position as the film immediately prior to Avengers Infinity War. Black Panther was released about a month before Infinity War, and about 2 months before Infinity War was released, the first big trailer hit. In that trailer, everyone saw that Black Panther, members of his cast, and Wakanda were going to play a prominent role in the film. And I think a lot of people went to Black Panther because they saw it as a kind of preamble to Avengers Infinity War, more so than interest in the actual character. It was brilliant of Marvel Studios to do this, by the way. The media, of course, totally ignored this factor and tried to further sell the idea that Black Panther was bigger than the rest of the MCU.
Hi, Chadwick. I know we have to wait a long time for Black Panther 2, but how much of Avengers Infinity War is at least Black Panther 1.5?
Avengers Infinity War is Avengers Infinity War. It's not Black Panther 1.5 or Black Panther 2 or anything like that. I think we have a strong presence within the movie. And it was great to have some of these people, I'm not gonna say who exactly, in Wakanda. But it is its own movie, and it was great to go from what we did and with Black Panther and bring some of that into Avengers. It was a relief, actually.
I don't think there is nearly as much hype for Wakanda Forever, and it would not surprise me if it doesn't do well, especially in comparison to the first film. The lack of T'Challa and the idea that he might be replaced as Black Panther with a woman just isn't what fans want to see, in my opinion. Speaking of the Wakanda Forever trailer, yeah, this isn't Namor. For starters, he's got a friggin' bone in his nose. What we have here appears to be another leftist-inspired reimagining of a character, mostly for the sake of cultural diversity. Namor is supposed to be half Atlantean and half Scottish. His full name in the source material comics is Namor Mackenzie, the son of a Scottish-American fisherman and the Queen of Atlantis. Namor has always had a rather elven or Spock-like appearance. There's nothing Mesoamerican or Mayan about him or the Atlanteans in the source material. In fact, these Atlanteans look more Polynesian to me, and the last time I checked, Polynesia was in the Pacific, not the Atlantic. Studios used to do this stuff all the time with comic book characters, and that's one of the things that made the MCU stand out in the beginning. This kind of creative meddling with characters by studios has seldom, if ever, worked by and large. So one wonders why, after relatively faithful recreations of their comic book characters in Phase 1, Marvel Studios would resort to these sort of pre-MCU shenanigans. One possible reason is that they don't want to pay as many royalties to the estate of Bill Everett, Namor's creator. Marvel has played these kinds of games before. Case in point, Jim Starlin. Starlin created the character of Thanos. He also created a forgettable Batman villain named the KG Beast. Thanos appeared in and had been the focus of most of Marvel Phase 2 and was the major villain in 2 blockbuster films that are among the highest grossing films of all time. KG Beast, on the other hand, appeared in 1 movie, the much maligned Batman v Superman. He wasn't even called KG Beast in the film and didn't wear any variation of the comic book character's costume. Starlin made more money off of KG Beast's appearance in Batman v Superman than Thanos' appearances combined over at Marvel. That's how stingy Marvel is. Their contracts subtract payment to the original creators the more the character is altered for movies and TV. The word comes down the pike that they have to alter a given character to save money, and because the entertainment industry is so infested with leftists, we get a reimagining designed to appease the left, who are obsessed with ethnic and cultural diversity at the expense of everything else. Probably the brightest spot for me was the new SheHulk trailer, but honestly, I'd prefer more Hulk over SheHulk. It was funny, though, seeing the Banner Hulk doing yoga. But I miss the monster hero, and this just doesn't cut it for me, and I don't think I'm alone. I've seen Angry Joe comment on the boulder throwing moment in the trailer where She-Hulk throws a boulder farther than the Banner Hulk does. I'd just like to point out that the Banner Hulk threw his boulder rather casually while She-Hulk lobbed it with more exertion on her face, so I think that moment is fine. I also thought the yoga moment where she shows more grace and balance than he does was fine too. Yoga's pretty hot right now, and it wouldn't surprise me if Jen Walters already had been taking yoga classes. Women usually tend to be more flexible and graceful than men anyway. The new trailer integrates her even more into the established MCU, and that will perhaps be the show's biggest draw. My biggest problem with the first trailer was that it emphasized stuff that they thought women would be interested in to the detriment of the trailer as a whole. The whole dating thing was also a bit off-putting to me. When I read stories with She-Hulk in them back in the 80s, she had a steady boyfriend named Wyatt Wingfoot. Wingfoot was an Olympic decathlon star who roomed with the Human Torch in college, and I guess you could say he was kind of like a Native American Indiana Jones. He was cool and complimented her well. Today, however, they show She-Hulk in the comics sleeping around with guys, and I'm just not into that. She slept with Hercules and Juggernaut, among others. While the breaking of the fourth wall thing may have been fun and innovative in comics in the 80s, I think it's probably going to come off like Fleabag to today's audiences, especially if She-Hulk is promiscuous. I think She-Hulk works better when she's not a bed-hopping slut.
Just gonna go for a shit.
I'm ignoring that.
Actually, you wanna go and have sex?
That's better.
I'm really good at it.
He won't be.
I'm really good at it.
He won't be. He's really good at it.
Okay, this next one isn't related to Comic-Con specifically. It relates to the mid-credits scene in Thor Love and Thunder, and I thought I'd just stick this in here. Hercules. Okay, so I was initially excited to see Hercules in the mid-credits sequence, but then I remembered what they've been doing to the character in the comics. Hercules, or at least Marvel's version of Hercules, was based off of the Steve Reeves version in the Italian movies of the 1950s. I mean, it's a blatant... You could even call it a ripoff. They literally made Steve Reeves and put him into the comic books fighting Thor and the Hulk and such. He was based off of the movie star version of the character. Now, years later, of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger has played Hercules, and so has Lou Ferrigno, and they altered his appearance slightly to accommodate the builds of these actors. But lately, of course, what they've been doing, and this was totally predictable, was they've been going back to the fact that Hercules is a Greek god, and as we all know, the Greeks were all gay. I don't know if they were all gay. I kind of doubt it. But if that's what Marvel, of course, was going to do. They were going to throw out the old, pleases everybody version of Hercules and have him, in relationships with Wolverine and Marvel Boy and stuff that the majority of us would prefer probably not to look at. But yeah, it's gotten to the point now where I would be highly surprised if they didn't do that to the character in the film. Over on the DC side, the brightest spot for me was the new Shazam movie, except I'm not all that crazy about the expanded Shazam family. To me, the Shazam family looks like this. When Jeff Johns rebooted the concept in the comics, he expanded the family and made them look more like the Power Rangers to me. All of this takes away emphasis from Billy Batson, and I think introducing the expanded family right away in the first film wasn't a great idea. Still, it looks lighthearted, and that's a plus. While I'm looking forward to it, I'm not excited about it. DC is in shambles right now, and it needs to do something drastic in order to fix things, and now's the time, since Marvel appears to be looking rather weak these days. I want to take a moment now to talk about the Orville briefly. There was no announcement at San Diego Comic-Con for a 4th season, but they did announce that all 3 seasons of the show would now move to Disney Plus, or at least be available on Disney Plus, which is a positive. That means more people are going to see it. I do think it's a shame if they don't get a 4th season, but 3 seasons isn't too bad. I mean, the original Star Trek series had 3 seasons, so I think the show is in good company even if it stops now. I do think that the show could use a 4th season as well. I think that they really turned a corner here with this last season. Not that I didn't mind the humor of the first 2 seasons, but the show quickly established itself as not being just another comedy parody show based off of an established franchise. It was actually blazing its own little trail and doing the kinds of stories that Star Trek used to do, but hadn't been doing in shows like Discovery and Picard. So, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it gets a 4th season. But if it doesn't, hey, again, it matches the original Star Trek series. So, that's not a bad thing. In the world of published comics, there was, of course, nothing to offer this year, like most years. In my opinion, the big innovation when it comes to the storytelling medium of comics is not happening over at Marvel or DC. It's happening in the creator-owned, crowd-funded world of Comicsgate. Comics by the likes of Richard C. Meyer and his Jawbreakers, or Ethan Van Sciver with Cyberfrog, Narwhal with Nosferatu, Mandy Summers with Gemshock, John Dillard with The Buckler, and Art T. Bear with Black and White. This is where not only you're finding a renaissance or resurgence of older and better comic book storytelling methods, but you're also seeing a vested interest. All right, there's a guy outside my window revving up his engine. Okay, he's gone now. Getting back to comics, yes, this is where you're seeing the real innovation happen. These comics aren't being made by an R&D division at Disney to maintain the trademark on IPs. These are made by men and women who need them to succeed, and therefore they're making them as entertaining as possible. The other big innovation, and I don't want to forget this guy, is Young Ripa and his Ripaverse, which is currently crowdfunding now, and I'm waiting to see that. I have a feeling there's going to be some good stuff coming out of that. Once again, thank you for bearing with me through all this. It was a bit of a slog, but as always, thank you for watching.
This message has been brought to you by Dolt Cola, because even the stupid get thirsty.
That trailer, the one that they released today, I was like, okay, this looks like this is going to be some classic SheHulk right out of the comics, if they do it that way. And then the last thing was seeing Deadpool show up in the middle, or at the very end of the trailer. That sold it for me. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Deadpool return, and hearing about Deadpool Born Again as an 18 episode series with Vincent D'Onofrio coming back as Kingpin. I am so hyped about that. So, and it does make perfect sense to bring for those of you that don't know, you know, I mean, if you don't know, then obviously you haven't watched Deadpool, but Deadpool, you know, is an attorney by day and superhero by night, and She-Hulk is an attorney. And so it makes perfect sense that the two of them would actually get to know each other.